Welcome to Wild Wednesday, wonderful people. We have made a mistake. I am big about being consistent in your work. One of the things that you really need to do to prevent errors in your work is to make sure you're consistent. I know that sounds stupid and obvious, but if you're going to prevent errors in your work, if you're working from multiple documents on multiple different devices, it's very easy to find yourself lost between versions. If something doesn't update, if you're hanging out in an older version of whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So story time about the dumb mistake that brought this along. I'm writing a story and it's going to be a while before I publish this thing. I'm a little bit concerned about my Neolithic story because it's taking time to research that I don't. I pause that while something else is in my head. And then I've got a major piece of infrastructure I have to work on for the main piece of being an author, such kind of stuff. Okay. Story time recommencing out of the tangent. The error that I made was that I was operating from Google Documents for quite some time. Google Documents is great because you can basically use it everywhere, blah, blah, blah. I started running into some space and size issues and I wound up using a different on the computer word processor programming. It's an open source deal, so it's free, it's nice, it's wonderful, it sucks. I won't say which one. When I was playing with the documents, I uploaded all of the most recent documents to Google Sheets, or thought I had. I went back to the story I hadn't touched in 4 months. Basically, it's a back burner kind of thing, a project I work on, something pops in my head, or I need a break from doing my main stuff. I'll fiddle around with this story. It's a third or fourth string kind of project. It's not a time waster, but it's a project that is not high on my completion priority list. So I started working on this thing on a different processing. When I copied it over into Google Sheets and I saved it at the same file, same folder, as I was working through, when I turned it back into a Google Documents project, what ended up happening was I was reading through it, the most recent document by name. I was reading through it and I'm like, I could have sworn I finished this chapter. I spent a few hours reading, editing, playing, tweaking, adjusting, etc. And I'm like, I get to the next chapter down on the list because I leave prompts, then I flesh out outline, and then I write the chapter. I use a slobby outline format, so I'm not going to be teaching how to outline anytime soon. I know how to do it. I just don't. So don't follow me there. Use what your third grade teacher told you to do. Here I am working on Google Documents and wondering where the hell is this chapter? So in frustration, I'm like, I finished editing something that was mostly done. And then I hit the next chapter and then the prompt is there and little else. And I'm like, I know I wrote this. I had to go and open the most recent offline document and look through it. And sure enough, I had already finished those. I edited a chapter, I finished a chapter, and I wrote a chapter, and they did properly transfer over something. I don't know if I named it wrong. I don't know how I made my error, but error was made. Had I been consistent with my document, had I been consistent with my naming procedures, had I been consistent on how I deliver my content, that error would not have been made. For me, consistency is key. It feels like almost every time I make an error, it's because I'm not being consistent about how I'm delivering things. Documents error versus the offline free shareware word processor deal. I'm struggling figuring out how that went off the rails, but it's irrelevant. It went off the rails. I caught it, but I wasted probably 2 hours of writing time because I had to pull up the other document and I had to go line by line on the chapters that I worked on to make sure that everything was either improved to the new version and I didn't leave anything out from the old version. As a writer's handy helper tip, try to be consistent with your device, your delivery, and everything else. It'll prevent errors and it'll stop you from wasting time. It was really discouraging when I discovered I had a whole chapter missing in a document that I thought that I was most current on. So be consistent. We're going to keep this short. I got a bunch of other videos going to make today. So I just have a